Getting our title slide, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then I have to bring all my Zoom windows to the front again. So give me just a moment. Um, there we are. Okay. Um, Perfect. All right. So as Anu said, I've been doing this a really long time. Let me do the brief bit of introduction on me. So here's a copy of a book I put out in 2008, which is really just a collection of blog posts. I've been blogging in this space since 2001 because that's really when blogs in their current form arrived. But I've been doing product management mostly in Silicon Valley since the 1980s. So for those who thought this was a new thing, not so much. And my first product leader job, and we'll define that in a moment, in the early 90s. So way to count that on your fingers is I've got about 30 years of managing software product management teams. I write, I do some mentoring, whatever, and the fun I'm having lately is what we call the smokejumper job, which is where I step into a company on a short-term interim basis. Often that's a quarter or two to create or straighten out or fix or take whatever action it is to repair the product management team and then help hire my replacement. So that's as much fun as you can have without becoming a full-time employee of a startup. I've done 6 startups in my day. 4 of those we file under character building and good life lessons, because honestly, there was nothing else out of it that was that turned out well. So that's me. Let's jump ahead. And I thought I would break this into 2 pieces. The first is just a couple of slides on what I think product managers do, because I find that as I wander the world virtually or in person, there's a lot of different definitions of what product folks do. So this is my favorite. This is my go-to set of what it is that we're supposed to be doing. Uh, I think everybody will compare that to their current role and find some adds and some deletes, but it's a good start. So what does a product manager do? You know, for me, and I mostly work with companies that are pure play software companies. So they're building software as their product, as opposed to something in their infrastructure to support another business. Uh, Product managers, we worry about not just delivering some bits, but we worry about delivering bits that are going to find market acceptance and customer joy and revenue and good outcomes. So it's not enough just to deliver something, it's got to be the right stuff. We think a lot about market segments instead of individual customers because, at least in the software business, all the money that we make in the software business is in selling the identical bits to many, 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 many customers instead of building fresh bits for each customer. I would call that professional services. So the question we ask all day long is, what does my segment need and what will it pay for? Because that's a good guide to how we should be improving our products, right? Technical features, of course, but that's not enough. We have to ship something that's used and accepted and adopted and loved, or we've mostly wasted our time. Last 2 points here. I believe it's inevitable in every organization, in every company, that different parts of the company have different priorities, different strategies. Our engineering teams want us to invest more in technical debt reduction, and our marketing teams want us to invest more in shiny objects or shiny phrases we can put in outbound messaging. And our sales teams want us to do whatever crazy thing their one account wants us to do, et cetera. So I think as product managers, we spend all day long dealing with groups that don't really agree with each other, yet we still have to get there. And then no one works for us. So the picture you're seeing here, which is a sheepdog and a sheep, I think so many of us spend our days chasing our various customers and stakeholders and partners to keep them moving in whatever direction the roadmap might suggest, because they tend to wander. So even though no one works for us, we spend a lot of our time thinking about how to motivate and align and push and cajole and convince the various folks involved, because we've got to get them to move together as a group. So there's the product manager version in words. I have a chart here I've used for, I don't know, probably 15 years already. That's the picture version of this, because we, of course, we know that the engineering side of the house would much rather have pictures and diagrams than words. So let's fill that same thing in here. And I've put a little, 3-lobe diagram like everybody likes. Product management in the middle, because that's what we're talking about. Of course, we always put ourselves in the middle, but notice we're not at the top. Nobody works for us. We work for the executives in the company. And I've really delineated three groups here. On the left, the folks I call makers, not just our developers, but our designers, our tech writers, our test engineers and automation folks, our DevOps people. These are the people who actually do real work to make the products that we're working on. On the right, notice I've divided our sales and marketing organization from the actual people who give us money or use our products. So markets and customers on one half of that bubble, marketing and sales, which is our employee friends on the other side, and then of course executives. So if we march through this really quickly, because this is an input-output diagram, as all engineers would recognize, what's the input from product management to our maker team? Pretty long list. So lots of things, but I always start with context and conversation. If we're just writing user stories and pushing them through some Jira system or something, we're missing almost all the goodness here, because we know that our maker team, our developers and designers are smart. They bring lots of interesting solutions to the problem. We want their brains, not just their fingers. And so we're exchanging a lot of things here. Also notice this is a two-sided arrow. There's good evidence, and many of you may know this, that all developers are smarter than all product managers. How do we know? Well, it's easy. We ask them, and if we ask them in the right setting, they'll admit that they're all smarter than we are. So giving our maker team the answers and the solutions, first of all, wastes all their enthusiasm, wastes all their smarts, and we don't get their hearts engaged. We just get their fingers engaged. So things that flow from the product team to the maker team: context, conversations, market views, priorities, problem statements. You see all those things. I put user stories and backlogs and personas at the end, because I think those are they're results of having these good conversations and insights. I don't actually care if we use user stories or something else. We just need to agree on some way to talk about what we're building. And what we get back from the maker side of the house, they all think it's product. It's not product. It's the product bits that come out of engineering. And we know that it's not the whole product, because when we ask marketing and sales what they need, they want none of the same things. There'll be no match here. What marketing and sales really want are stories, not user stories, saleable stories. What do we repeat to our customers to get them to give us money? What do we write in our benefit statements? How do we segment the market? Benefits. Honestly, they don't care about features. Give me benefits. What's the pricing? What's the demos? These are all the tools that our sales team, and therefore our marketing team, need to turn our products into money. And what do we get back from our marketing and sales team? Actually, if somebody wants to give me the answer and type it in the chat box, what's the thing we get back from marketing and sales? Anybody? Okay, we'll just keep going. The thing we get back, and I've politely labeled it here, input and feedback in quotes, right? Headaches. Yes, Devin, that's exactly right. We get headaches. Mostly what we get is we get requests for all the things we didn't do. Right? Because it turns out there's an infinite appetite, both on our sales team and our customer base, for an infinite number of features and extensions and capabilities. In fact, if I survey, and by the way, I mostly work enterprise, B2B, if I survey any sales team in the world that sells B2B enterprise software products, and I ask them these questions, I always get the same answer. What's the number one reason that we closed big deals this quarter and we succeeded in selling things? Again, anybody with the quick answer is welcome to type. And I'm going to ask them what the two reasons are that we didn't close deals, right? And to a person, if you go talk to enterprise sales teams, you will discover that the reason we closed really big deals this quarter, nice guess, Bobby, value delivery, not at all. The reason we closed big deals this quarter is because we have a great sales team, and they're all above average, and they all deserve a raise. Just go ask them, right? And the two reasons we lost deals this quarter were because we were missing, I don't know, 50 or 1,000 features, and because our price was too high. And that's important, because if we hope to learn how to improve our products by talking to our sales team, we're always going to get a little information, but mostly biased and mostly centered on how salespeople think. And you're going to discover, when you ask your sales team how to improve your product, that they're great salespeople, that we should lower our price again, and that we're missing this really short list of perhaps 800 features. So therefore, the most important arrow on this whole chart is the next one, which is where we as product people talk directly to our real end customers, our real end users, our real buyers, our real lost deals, our partners. Notice here I'm skipping over, around, through, underneath my sales and marketing team, because if my product managers and I don't talk directly to the people who are actually making decisions and using our products, we don't learn very much and we don't know how to fix our stuff. So I know many, probably most of you are having this tussle, this argument about how you get to talk with real end users. We're going to come back to that in the leader discussion. Okay, let's keep going, because there's one group left, of course. Every company has executives. What they're really looking for, by the way, is revenue forecasts, commitments to money, roadmaps, strategies. A hint for everyone in a product management job is that your executive team basically won't listen to anything you say unless it's denominated in money, right? Future euros, future rand, future dollars, future yen, future pounds, whatever it is. If you are talking to your executives and you're not talking about future money, they're probably not listening and they're ready to close out the meeting, right? So think about that in your communication structure. And then last, of course, what do we get back from the executive team? If we've made a good pitch, we're always pitching for more makers, more developers, because there's never enough. And so we might get back budgets and staff and targets for more development teams, not more product managers, but more makers. So that, for me, sort of encapsulates the product management job. Again, notice we're dealing with a lot of people. You have to be trilingual here. You have to speak enough developer that you don't get disinvited from the stand-ups. You have to speak enough end customer that you really know what they're talking about and you can figure out what they need. And you have to speak enough very basic finance that you can convince your executives to keep your product funded. Okay, so that's the product management job. Hoping some of you recognize it. Let's talk about the leader job. What's a product leader? And this is just definitional, so we know what we're doing. I don't know if this woman's a product leader, but I'm going to claim she is. And what do I mean? What do I use that phrase for, right? For me, a product leader is somebody who manages a team of product managers, completely obvious. Might include designers, might include some product ops folks, right? Has lots of different titles. Everywhere I go, I see a different name, don't care. Group product manager, director, vice president, chief product officer, um, lots of labels, right? The labels don't matter here for me. I instead ask the question of, do you have product managers working for you in the reporting or HR sense? If you are, then I think you're a product leader. But I'm going to exclude a bunch of other folks, and I'm going to exclude people who mostly run engineering organizations. So I would say if you have 85 developers or engineers and 4 product managers working for you, I'm not going to be really thinking about you here. I'm going to call you a VP of engineering or a CIO or a CTO or something else so we can know who we are talking about, right? Really important. So that's just to help us frame where we are. And let's dig in. Let's figure out what a product leader does or what a product leader's responsibilities are so we can then take those apart a bit. Take a deep breath here. Okay, so I'll just click these off. I really have 4 items and where it says 4 at the top, right? And we'll break each one down. The first one, of course, is if you're a product leader, you need to figure out what your product team looks like, how many people, where you're going to get them, hiring, nurturing, or coaching. You have to design a product organization instead of having somebody in an HR or executive role give you an org chart or a set of open positions, right? You have to have a plan for who you need, how you're going to divide the work. Pretty important. Second thing you must do as a product leader, you have to drive product strategy, product processes, product tooling. You may not have to do this work yourself, but you have to make sure it gets done. Anybody who's been a product manager at a company that has no strategy pretty much knows they're going to fail because there's nothing to hang our decisions on unless we've got some higher level strategy And so a product leader has to make sure someone at the company is driving product strategy, and then we have the tools below that to make it work. Third thing, uh, essential, almost everything we do as product leaders and product managers requires us to reach across the organization, to developers, to designers, to ops folks and DevOps folks and finance people and sales people and marketing people and everybody else. So as a product leader, I know I have to spend a lot of my energy getting other leaders of other functional groups to collaborate, to cooperate, to get their folks to play along. Otherwise, everybody on my team fails, right? And then the last one, and I split this out because in big enough companies where you have a VP or CEO level team separate from directors, it turns out working with the VPs and the C-level folks and the SVPs is really a different animal. So here's my 4 product leader items. Notice that none of them said product manage a product. This is all about product managing something bigger or something different. And so my takeaway for this as we dig in is I think the responsibility, the goal of a product leader is to figure out how to make the product managers on that team succeed. Everywhere I go in the world, I talk with product managers who are failing, and they're not failing because they can't do their job. They're failing because the larger organization doesn't really want them to do what they're supposed to do or isn't giving them the tools or a seat at the table. So as a product leader, my metric, my goal for the product leaders I coach, which is many, is that they have to figure out how to help their product managers succeed rather than doing the job for them. Okay, let me take a breath here, maybe even a sip of water. You can listen to the dog barking in the back. Okay, so let's dig in. We're going to take one of these at a time. All right. So designing a team. Here's somebody designing a team. I know because she's got a whiteboard and she's drawing boxes on the wall. Okay. So um, hang on just a sec. So let's just list what you have to have. You have to have a plan for a few things, right? How many product managers we need? And anybody who wants to drop a comment into the chat box, if they have a metric or a suggestion for how many product managers we need, this would be really handy. My metric, my tool, of course, is that it's probably related if you've got product shipping to how many people are on your maker side. I would say if you've got fewer than one product manager for every, let's say, 9 or 10 makers, developers, designers, DevOps, everybody else, then you're probably short of product managers. But choose your own metric. You need a structure, and we're going to draw a bunch of those for how we divide the work and how we assign various product folks to the jobs they've got. So we'll come back to that. You need a hiring strategy. I see a lot of companies where their hiring strategy is to find enthusiastic folks who are already employees of the company doing something else who've never done product. And based on that, they'd love to throw them into the product situation because they know the company. That's a pretty tough strategy. Another one I see a lot is subject experts. We are building software for veterinarians for large animals, and so we hire veterinarians to be our product managers. Not ideal. So what's your strategy for experience versus enthusiasm? And then the last one, everybody you hire on your team is going to need some help. So it's part of your job as a leader to figure out what they're good at and what they need help with, so that you're going to get them that help, whether that's you coaching and mentoring or sending them off to classes and reading blogs and books or whatever it is. How are you going to upskill your team so they can do the things they need to do, right? All right, let's keep going. All right, first principles. For me, how does product management add value? A lot of executives will tell you that we add value by whipping our developers harder and making them write code faster. It's entirely wrong. It's entirely wrong. The way we add value, first principle, is we make sure the things we're building are the right things in the right order that the market needs. Because if we build the wrong thing, even if it's beautiful and perfect and bug-free and easy to use and highly scalable and secure, if our customers don't need it, if our customers aren't going to put it to use, it's 100% waste. So number one thing for product managers, are we building the right stuff in the right order? Are we pushing away all the useless work? Okay. We're stuck on the design slide. Okay. Let me just get out of SlideShare here, and then I will come back because I seem to have lost some presentation mode here. So hang on. Too many tools. Here we go. All right. If we're doing this right, somebody can check that we've just seen the word frustration come up.
You're just waiting?
Nothing yet. Okay. I seem to be having some trouble sharing my screen. So hang on. New share. Share. Okay. Did that work?
Not yet. No.
Not yet. Okay. So we're going to, it says that I'm sharing my screen, but I'm clearly not. So let me turn off sharing for a minute and we're going to try again. Sorry. Technical glitch here. By the way, we will paste in the link to the slides. Anu, I think you have it, right? So let's see if we can. How's that?
Is it coming? No, we can't see it yet.
Okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get out of SlideShare mode and we're going to do this in the simple PowerPoint model. So hang on. And then everybody can see my speaker notes. So let's share this. Okay. Yes, no, maybe?
No. So do you want me to try share, Rich, and see if it works on my side?
Sure.
Give it a try.
Give it a try. So, and I'm on slide 8.
Yeah. Try.
Okay, I'm seeing something there. Are you guys seeing it?
Okay. So
excellent. Okay. There's our fall over. Good. I fell back. So let me catch up. Yeah, so we're on slide 8 there, first principles. The other two things I note is that the biggest frustration I hear from development teams and product managers is that we can't finish anything. That often I run into executive teams that have a very short attention span, and they want to stop every 8-week project at the 2-week mark, which means we never get anything done, right? And then the last thing I've called out here, and I've carefully put proxies in red. Notice I'm claiming it's a 4-letter word. It's 6 if you count. But for me, first principle is we talk directly with our real users. We talk directly with our real buyers, our partners. If we're just reading Salesforce notes or talking to our sales and marketing teams, then mostly we're writing the wrong stories and building the wrong stuff. So when I parachute into a company, there's no excuse for the folks on my team to tell me they don't talk with customers. Okay, so let's roll to the next one. Good. And so here's our handoffs. There's my brief sports analogy, right? I will claim that every time we have one more person in the communications hop between us and the customers, we lose context, we lose information, we lose enthusiasm, we lose insight. So if you're writing user stories secondhand, third hand, fourth hand, where someone else in your company is telling you what those stories are, I don't blame you. This is an organizational problem, but I'm guessing about half of the stories you write aren't very useful, even if they're grammatically correct. Notice I don't care if we start the word with the words as a user. I care about what's in the story and whether it matters going to move the business ahead, move the customer joy ahead, move the NPS up, whatever it is. I care about what we're going to do, not how we phrase it. Okay, and again, advance apologies to everybody with a product owner title. I'm not criticizing you. I'm going to criticize your organization and maybe your product leadership. Okay, so let's roll forward to 10. All right, so here's a product structure I like and one I strongly recommend. There's a build here, but unfortunately you won't see it. And what you see here left to right horizontally is a series of whole product teams. This is what, if you go way back to the Agile Manifesto 2001, When we're talking about whole teams, this is what we mean. Developers plus designers plus DevOps plus tech writers, whatever. Notice that the team is labeled as stable and complete. We don't borrow. We don't blow this team up every time we have a new project, right? We keep them together for the long term for years. And notice the product manager is directly connected to one team, right? So the product manager and the stable development team have a long-term relationship. We have trust. We can create our own processes. We can change things. And on the right side are the users for that particular piece of the product. It might be the administration interfaces, in which case we talk to the admin users. It might be the end consumers, in which case we talk to the end consumers. It might be the buyers who don't actually care about the software. Well, then we don't have to talk to them. But notice that I've written carefully frequent, in-depth, non-sales learning conversations. Of course, we're on sales calls, but we don't learn much on sales calls, and that's not why we have sales calls. We have sales calls to convince customers to give us money. We have learning calls to ask lots of awkward questions over 30 or 60 minutes and to discover new things. So I've striped this left to right. Notice there's some directors up above, but this is a product structure, a product organization that often delivers really good product, because the people doing it are talking to the people who need it, and we pushed everyone else out of the way. Okay, let's go to the next one, which I've labeled, I think, as a product structure I don't particularly like. Notice I don't hate it yet. We'll get there in a moment, right? Now here, we've picked up the Scrum book and we've done literally the only thing it says, which is to have product managers or product owners on the left and somebody else on the right. So here we've broken up the people who were facing the development team or the maker team from the people who talk with customers. And if you were paying attention, I'm unhappy because now we have two folks, one whom doesn't really understand how systems are built and is on the right, and one of whom doesn't get to talk to customers and gets told a lot of things that are written on Post-it notes or Jira tickets to do stuff with very poor context and a very high likelihood that we're not going to get exactly what we want. So we've created a communications gap here. And also notice what we're flowing here is not problem statements, it's solution statements. It's what the people on the right think we should build. And if you remember, the people on the right don't spend much time with our systems, and they have pretty poor judgment about our architecture and how things fit together and the best technical solutions. So not only are we wasting the brains of our maker team, we're wasting the brains of the folks on the left side, the product owners and product managers who are getting requirements instead of problem statements. So this is wasteful and it's inefficient. It sometimes gets us good results, but when I parachute into a company, I try to pull those two groups together and they all work for me. If they're not happy, I promote them to some other job in some other department, because the first thing we want to do is reduce the communications overhead between the left and the right. Okay, let's take a breath and then let's go to the one I really don't like. And I think I've used the word hate here. Okay, this is every IT organization that you've ever worked for or know. And I'm going to be careful here because when I use the abbreviation IT, what it really means is it's not important to the business. If you really cared about what happened on the left, you would call it engineering or a product or development. But when we call it IT, everybody on the right now thinks of it as a cost center. If you're a bank, if you're an airline, if you're a railroad or a government agency, the folks on the left are rewarded for reducing their spend, for having fewer people, for hiring cheaper folks who are more junior, for getting stuff shipped on time instead of shipping things that are useful, right? On the right side, you can see this whole massive political escalation where everybody knows that there's some business unit executive or managing director or CFO who's going to make all the decisions about what we're going to build. And so everybody's going to lobby to explain to that executive why their thing is the most important thing. And the most savvy people are going to get a yes. Notice again, we're not only shipping requirements from right to left, we're also shipping delivery dates, which are all unreasonable. And then on the left side, we've got projects, not products, but projects. And that means every time something flows from right to left at the top, we blow up some group, we form new groups, people without context, people without long-term commitments to the thing we're doing. We're starting from scratch again. And it's not just inefficient, it's heartbreaking, because the really smart people on the left don't get a chance to spend enough time on anything to become the experts, and they don't get to decide the best solutions. They get told what to do. So whatever label we put on the folks on the left, I expect them to be less happy, less productive, less engaged with customers, and delivering less value than if we have a product style organization. So as a product leader, I've spent the last couple of decades or more fighting for product structures that work, so that the folks who work for me can get more done, can be happier, can be more productive, can love their jobs, right? Okay, so let's keep going. All right, so and again, an apology here. I'll tell you that if you pick up the Scrum book and you have no context and you do only what the Scrum book says as a product owner, I think the job you're in is a failed job, because you do the two things at the top. You write stories, you prioritize backlogs. By the way, every Scrum book says you have to be 24/7 available to your team at all times. Now, I'm scratching my head to figure out how we get out and figure out what customers want, right? Sorry. And the things we're not doing, right? We're going through proxies to get to our stakeholders, right? Um, there's no time or reward or system or training for anybody to go out and do discovery. So again, it's not your fault that you're a product owner in an organization that doesn't want you to talk with users. It's that no one is fighting for your required opportunities to do that. That's the product leader job, right? We almost always focus on productivity. I don't actually care about story points or engineer weeks. What I care about is shipping things that customers value and pay us for and use. That's the engineering team's problem, to get more done. My job is not to get more done, it's to get the right things done. And then last, and it makes my heart sick here, is in general, the folks on this project are assigned after all the decisions have been made, after the money's been allocated, after the schedule's been set. So much fewer degrees of freedom. They do what they're told. And so I see product owner as a role, not a job, a role, and it's one half of every product manager's job. So every product manager needs to do these things, facing their maker developer team about half the time, and facing their markets and users about half the time, right? So again, not criticizing anybody in their job, but the organizations that put them there. Okay, let's keep rolling. All right, we're going to click through the rest of these, I think, faster so we have time for questions. Tools and strategy. Again, the product leader has to make sure we have a strategy, right? If we picked OKRs, it's not enough to have OKRs. It would be really good to have OKRs that are the right ones. So when we achieve them, we deliver customer value, we make people happier, we make more money, right? We need a portfolio level strategy. Often I try to delegate the work here because I'm too busy to do it myself, but someone has to make sure we have strategies and tools and we focus on outcomes. Good, keep rolling. Here's a really good book. You can see it in the handout. Josh Seiden wrote an excellent book about outcomes and output. Go read it. Okay, growing cross-functional collaboration, and no one, the picture there is what we used to call trust falls, which old style Silicon Valley companies did. They don't do it anymore because the lawyers at the company realize people get hurt. But we have to trust and build collaboration with our peers and other departments, right? Cross-functional task forces, bring people in, psychological safety, you see them all here, right? And we align people in the company not around doing what we say, we align them around getting good outcomes for our customers and our company. When we lead with outcomes, people are more willing to help. And we share what we know. This isn't about hiding the data. This is about being enthusiastic leaders of the people who don't work for us. Good, let's keep going. All right, problem solving, right? And I've mentioned it briefly, but I'll say it again. Here's somebody at a whiteboard. I don't actually know what her title or job is. If we think that gathering requirements means writing them down on Post-it notes, we're missing the whole point, right? In general, our customers don't explain the problems to us correctly, and they almost never explain the solutions to us correctly. So we have to unpack what we learned from them, bring it back to our teams, get on the whiteboard, or in these days, Miro or Mural or whatever your favorite tool is, and think through the problems together and think through alternate solutions together, and let the smart folks on our teams help us get to better solutions than we might create ourselves. This isn't about grammar on user stories. This is about smart people and solutions. And I'll tell you, the folks on your team are desperate to be of help and to think and to contribute if we just let them. You don't have to do it on everything, but on the big, ugly, sticky problems, get smart folks together and let's figure them out. Okay, let's keep going. All right, last, working with C-level executives, and the reason I have a dog here, I got to tell you, I know we're recording it. I'll say it anyway. Everything I've learned about executives, I learned by house training a puppy. Okay. They're forgetful. When there's a mistake, it's probably my fault, not their fault. I have to clean it up. Treats are involved, a lot of repetition, right? Executives are busy. They're thrashed. They're thinking about 16 things. It's all ADHD and recency bias. If you expect your executives to remember what's on your roadmap, and you have better executives than I work with. Okay. It's in and out the ears. It's move on to the next thing. So we as product leaders, I personally as a product leader, have to remember that every time I sit with the executive team, I have to remind them what's on the roadmap, remind them why those things are going to drive real business outcomes, push for strategy. And I often end up informally coaching the other members of my executive team so they behave better. I know that if sales and marketing hate each other and won't talk to each other, I fail, right? So informally, I'm often the person on the executive team who's helping everybody else behave well. So in some respects, the product leader is product managing the executive team instead of the products, right? If nobody's doing this, you're in deep trouble, right? Yes, thanks, Simon. You have to remind them about this. When we look at what, yeah, that's good. Let's keep going. And so let's go to the pie chart. When I look at what enterprise companies are often spending their engineering on, and because nobody knows, let's go back and look at last quarter. A good spending model here is we're spending about half of our points or engineering weeks or strawberries, whatever we're counting, on things customers ask for by name. They want a new feature, they want a new report, they want a better workflow. We can't spend 100% on those things because, of course, our software is going to fall apart. The next big slice, the red slice, is all the things we have to do to stay in the software business. We work on quality, we work on security, we work on DevOps, we work on geographic failover so that when there's a rolling electric outage, we don't lose our back-end system. Right? Not that you guys know anything about that. The two smaller slices, the gray one is doing real validation and experiments. The blue one, particularly for enterprise companies, there's often some stuff that we must do for some big customers that's not on our plan. But if that grows much beyond 10 or 15%, we're probably out of business, right? Again, this is strategic. This is about how we think about spending our engineering time, not on one little ticket, but aggregated into strategy. So this is a tool for product leaders to convince their other executives that we can't spend 150% on the blue slice and spend 150% on the purple slice, by the way, because we'll be out of business. The other good feature of pie charts for folks who don't know is that if you want to make one slice of the pie chart bigger, you have to make a slice smaller, which executives hate, but that's why I use it all the time with executive teams. Okay, let's keep going. All right, here's a chart. I won't even bother going through it, but this is a chart I use a lot with executives and folks outside of the maker product space. It's a very simple Kanban style chart of what we're building by team, because everybody's forgotten. And everybody comes to me saying, I need a thing, and it needs to be now, and it's the top priority. and I pull this right out of my pocket or a notebook or screen and show them what we're actually working on that the entire company agreed was most important. And then I ask again whether their thing is really important. There's a long post on this. Anu, if you'll remind me, I'll get the URL out to everybody. Good, let's keep going. All right, so here's my takeaways so we have a little time for questions. For those who don't know it, by the way, on the right, that's a takeaway container that one might take food out from a store, right? Good, so product leadership takeaways. The product leaders don't focus on the products themselves. We focus on the product teams, make them successful, right? And we focus on the portfolios and we focus on the strategy, right? We have to design our organizations or nobody else will. And we want to coach the folks on our team so we can delegate the product work because we have other things to do. We think a lot about how other groups are rewarded, in particular sales teams. So anyone who's been in a company where you've launched a new product and the sales team is not selling it and you're surprised, I bet if you look at their compensation plan, you'll find out they can all hit their quota by selling the old products, which are easier, which they know, which the customers understand, and no one's bothering to work on your product. So that means that the only way we're going to get our sales team to sell a new product is by changing their comp plan. They get a bonus for it, or they can't get 100% quota unless they sell one. Salespeople do what we pay them to do, not what we want them to do. Let's keep going. Okay, we champion long-term value. Everybody else in the company is in the short term. This week, this day, this hour, can't we just, right? Product folks, especially product leaders, keep coming back to long-term value. How do we grow our markets, make our customers happier, make more money? And those are all my ingredients for making the conditions, setting up the conditions such that the product managers on our teams can actually do their jobs. All right, so if you roll to the last one, here's some contact information with you. Again, I think the URL, I'm going to grab that where the slides are and put it in back here so everybody can get it. Good. So let's open this up. We got 10 minutes for questions. However we want to do it, Anu, you're in charge.
Yeah. Okay, so feel free to pop your questions in the chat window, or you can also raise hand. And yeah, if you want to raise your hand and then speak, that's also fine. So whatever you feel comfortable.
Don't be shy.
Yeah.
Or don't be polite, I guess I would say.
How do I raise my hand?
Okay. So whoever raised their hand, just take yourself off mute and ask me the question.
I've got a question.
Go ahead, Martin.
I was very fascinated by your slide about the separation of this company where you have project teams.
Yes.
Maybe working underneath a CIO of some sorts.
Yes.
And I was curious to figure out or know if there's means to communicate why that is bad to, say, executives who can actually change that.
Yeah, and it's a hard problem because the executives who put that structure in place believe it's a good one, and often they've come out of non-software industries that aren't strategically depending on their software, where that was probably okay. That grew out of the 1960s, where you had one person who wrote reports in SQL and was told what the columns were on the reports, right? There's a lot of really good literature that shows that you get both better quality and more output out of dedicated teams, that every time you blow up a team and form a new team, there's startup time, there's context time, there's building of trust time, there's new process time. And what's probably most important is the project model leads itself to not supporting things over the long term. So we have this completely wrong idea that the software is done and we can move everybody off for a year and it won't break, it won't change, there won't be any new items or requirements or partners or dependencies. It's never true. And so I usually go back and I find the 500 tickets for the thing we just took the team off of, and we bring them back and say, no one is going to work on this for the next year. We're not going to fix our workflow. We're not going to improve our pricing, thing. We're not going to fix these bugs and get more scalability because we took the team off of that. The executives are all thinking about what we moved them to. The executives are always forgetting what we took them from. So in every instance, I come back with the plans we canceled. So we shipped 1.0. We had plans for 1.1. We blew up the team. We sent them elsewhere. 1.1 is never going to happen. And so I have to make it very specific and painful. I have to get instances and say, here's 9 projects that we didn't finish and we canceled. Here's 40 requirements or improvements that you told us as executives were most important, and there's no one working on them. This is hard. And that's, by the way, this is why the product leader job has a very short half-life, because it's unpopular to tell the rest of the executives all day long that they can't have what they want and that magical thinking doesn't make it so. So, before you take the product leader job, know that it may be short-lived. Good. Who's got another one?
Okay, so we've got another question by Masood, and he's asked, can product management be done by AI?
I don't think so at all. In fact, what I'd say is that there's pieces of this that we can AI, right? You might have some bot that goes out and gets you market research reports, but the market research reports don't really give you the answers, right? You might have some bots that read through your transcripts from interviews, but bots are terrible at interviewing users, right? And the AI bot story assumes that this is really a quantitative thing. I'll tell you that what we do is semi-qualitative and semi-quantitative, right? If you're spending so much time on a forecast that it's good to 3 decimal places, you've overinvested probably 50 times, right? The real answer is we need to compare things. The number of digits is where I usually start. Is this a 100,000 euro idea? Is it a €1 million idea? Right? Plus or minus 2x, because we can eliminate the bottom 85% of our backlog because they're €100 ideas, not 100,000 euro ideas. And that kind of intersection of rough analysis and gut sense and good customer thinking, I think is a long way from AI. I think we could automate writing user stories once we figured out all the things the user stories have to do. But notice, I don't think that's where we add value.
Rich, you really love user stories, don't you?
Well, I actually write them on occasion, and I certainly delegate a lot of them. But there's this confusion between I put words in a Jira ticket and going to get an outcome from my users that I overstress here, because a lot of folks think their job is to write user stories, and it's really not. It's to write user stories or whatever we choose to use that are going to drive real customer behavior and real business outcomes. And that's not about the word choice. That's about the thinking. We get paid to think. We get paid to be strategic. We get paid to bring smart people in the room.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Well, I see Simon's got his hands up. Simon, do you want to ask
Go
a
ahead,
question?
Simon. But take yourself off mute first, or we can't hear you.
Classic problem. Sorry about that. In our organization, we're lucky enough to have our product vertical all self-contained product managers and product owners living as colleagues,
Yes.
and then interfacing into engineering and that sort of world. Do you have any sort of advice on how to facilitate that relationship? Because it's something that it's not problematic, but we constantly have different product managers interfacing with different product owners.
Okay, so you've matrixed the product managers probably based on segments or geographies or something that's not the technology to product owners that are on the technology pieces. So is that fair? You're on mute. Stay off mute till we're done.
The product owner is tied into a team, and the team is a functional unit that delivers a component. A product manager is delivering a product line. and there's connections, but there's also sort of multiple.
Okay.
multiple
So it feels like you haven't mapped these correctly. So if the product managers are going to multiple teams and product owners, we're creating a conflict that somebody higher up has to solve, because each product manager, of course, wants 100% of every team on their item. So they get their things done. And that's naturally in conflict with all the other product managers who also want 100% of all the teams on their thing until they get it done. So you've created this logjam. You've created this intersection of problems that now somebody more senior has to sort it out, adjudicate it, allocate, make choices. I would shuffle this another way. I would look for opportunities to match the technology better to the products, such that the product manager, maybe working with 3 teams, but is the primary person for those 3 teams. This sounds like a mismatch. Sorry?
So as a hierarchical type setup, where
well, okay,
those share product owners, and that was almost one of the design decisions, and maybe I'm overtaking the role, but
well,
I like the thing where you say a product manager.
I'd be thinking really hard about another way to organize this. Maybe the software is not well architected. Maybe we haven't seen this problem for what it is, but I'd go back and look for another organizational model.
Okay, cool.
Good.
Thanks.
I don't have a hard stop, but others of you may. Who's got one more for me?
So there's 2 questions related to B2C business models. I think I'll ask that next. So what are the meaningful changes to this model when the context is B2C, and what techniques or tools do you use or recommend to engage with customers in the B2C model?
I actually think this is easier for B2C, because as a product manager, there's a million consumers out there that I could talk with, and I don't have to worry that I'm going to show an early design to one of them and lose a deal and cost the company its revenue. On the B2B side, we always have this worry that we're afraid to talk with our 3 or 4 largest customers and tell them that we haven't yet completely designed the future, because our sales team told them that we did. Again, I'm going to put the product owner, product manager into one person, one job, and that person's going to spend half of every week or every day interviewing real consumers. Now, how do you get them? You find them on social media, you offer small rewards. Maybe, in non-COVID days, you go to the shopping center and you interview folks with clipboards. Lots of ways to do it. But there's nothing like talking to real people who use your dating application or your pet food ordering application or your arrange rides to school for your children application, to really talk to a couple of those folks every week and find out what they worry about and what they care about. Everything else is secondary. There's a brilliant woman who lives here in Portland near me named Teresa Torres, who's the smartest person in the planet around how to do this stuff. So go read her website. But there's no excuses for having less than an hour or 2 a week talking to the real people who use your stuff. And if they're consumers, often, for instance, the $25 Amazon gift card is enough to get them talking, right? Or pick out 20 people from your tech support call list that have had their problem solved, but you have their email or their phone number, and invite them to share their point of view. Everybody wants to tell you what they think. All we need to do is ask. I made it sound easy. It's not easy. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're 1 minute past 7, so it's time to wrap up.
Okay.
So yeah, Rich, thanks so much for that talk. I've listened to this talk before, but every time I listen to it again, there's something new that I learned. And I think for me, the key thing was, when you move into a leadership role, you have to realize it's slightly different to being a product manager and being in the details, right? You need to step up, and often I think here especially we don't know what that is. The whole coaching, the leadership, driving it from a strategy perspective. I think a lot of that is often missing in action, and it's often because we don't realize it, and often you have to fight for that.
You do. You have to fight for it. And by the way, there's a lot of really good folks who may not be in Cape Town, but can do coaching remotely. If you're in a product leader job for the first time, get some help. may not be me. I have room for maybe only 8 folks on my coaching roster, but this is a hard job. It's different from the one you did before. It's easy to fail. You need some help, and the books are not enough. So find a coach, find a partner. You'll discover that all of us in the product leadership job are having the same issues. It's not just you. And that lets you get your ego out of the way and get some good advice.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks so much. It was great having you. To our first international. You're our first international speaker and our first online event, Rich. So thanks for sharing with us.
Great. Thanks everybody, and appreciate the invite. I hope to get there in person sometime soon.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And thanks everyone for attending. I've shared some of the useful links, and Anita shared as well. And our next event will probably be online again in the next quarter. So we hope to see you there. Have a wonderful evening and good luck with the load shedding.
Thanks.
Bye.